So we just saw a new presentation of The Division, and though we didn't get to play it, we did get a bit more information about how this game actually plays. That's kind of one of the things Ubisoft has been a bit cagey about, is what is actually happening, across larger sections of the game, what kind of things you're actually doing. And one of the things that they were talking about is wanting to let you play endlessly, sort of in the same way that Activision was saying about Destiny. And a lot of that has to do with acquiring better items, and there's very RPG-like tiers of, I wouldn't say loot, but weapons and equipment and that kind of thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, the game director that we spoke to, he said while the items didn't have tiers per se, that there were definitely progressions that would affect the statistics of your characters.
That's right.
So, like he did use the terms legendary and epic specifically, if you will. But I don't know, I don't think he meant that the game itself would have epic.
They're not going to be, blue and purple items necessarily.
Well, they could. I mean, the game's not finalized yet.
We do want an item progression, and we want to reward players for spending more time in the game, for going further in the game. You obviously, end game is a big part of what we want for The Division. We want to have content for players to play for endlessly, would be the ideal goal for the game. So you need to supply that with new items and new weapons that constantly get more powerful. But as to the specifics of tiering, we don't actually do that in the game, but they do get better.
Kind of sounds almost like an MMO to me, I feel like that's almost the direction that they're kind of heading in with The Division.
Well, it's not necessarily an MMO, but it is still one of those, shared world experiences where it's like sort of co-op, sort of PvP, but they're trying to do it in a seamless manner that makes you not have to think about grouping up and joining a party and all that rigmarole. But they are maintaining what they call the Holy Trinity from MMOs. You've got, your tank, your support character, which could be a healer, and you've got your damage character as well.
Yep, and that being said though, the characters aren't really limited to these. You can still have 3 damage characters go take on a mission, or even 4 tanky characters. You're not penalized heavily for just having everyone take on that one role. But at the same time, he said, the game director, said that they were aiming for a way to encourage players to go with a varied party to maximize the most that they can get out of The Division.
Yeah, I've always found it a bit strange when people try and bring those roles over to a modern shooter, because bullets don't really discriminate, but there's still, I guess, you can have heavily armored characters, you can have characters with flamethrowers or whatever have you. One of the things I thought was interesting when you asked him, can the drone get shot down? Yeah, it actually can. So the idea that you have this support character playing as a tablet, they aren't completely invincible. They are still vulnerable, and they still provide pretty significant abilities to the other 4 players on the ground.
That's right, and all those players also form, they generate threat or aggro. He did say that there was an aggro system present in this game as well, which, struck me as very familiar because I'm a big MMO person, and, the fact that there's an aggro system to manage or to look out for as well in The Division, I thought was quite a surprise. Yeah,
one of the things that I've always tried to figure out with this game is, what is the broad goal? What are you actually trying to work towards? And when he brought up they call it the mega map in the demo, it just looks like a map to me. I don't know what's so mega about it, but he brings that up, and there are these different areas that are marked off that are called events. And I asked him, well, what's the difference between that and one of the named buildings? And he was talking about maybe one of those will have more significant story events, as in a main mission or that kind of thing. There is
stuff that is potentially more important that will be tied to the narrative, that will be apparent on your map. When we open the map in that demo that we just went through, it's a more progressed map. There's a lot of information. That would be much further on in your progression in a district than when you're in the game and first coming in. We don't use fog of war because it's New York. Everyone knows the streets of New York. We're a Clancy agency. We have a high-tech gear, so you know the streets, but you don't necessarily know the status of a street, what's happening there. Those kind of things. So as you upgrade your base, the modules in your base, you can get more information about what's happening in the surrounding district.
As you're going through the different districts, you can see on the mega map what the security level is, what the infection level is, and you're sort of trying to affect those values to not so much rebuild a district, but just bring a little bit more order and security to it.
And the mega map, actually, there's also dark zones that
Yep.
are available, which, you know, leads us to the whole other world of PvP available in the game. And he did touch upon that as well. So that, you know, players who are sort of wandering the dark zone are susceptible to being attacked by other players alone. But at the same time, if you don't want to participate in that sort of combat, then you can just stay away from the dark zones and just have a game with you and your friend.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of similarities to Destiny and sort of just the high level structure. You've got the hub world, which is where players from any division will run into each other as they go and, I guess, visit vendors or, you know, party up and check their inventories and that sort of thing. You've got the dark zones, which are essentially what sounds like the Crucible PvP section. And then you just have the actual districts of New York themselves, which equate to areas where story missions and side missions take place. And when you're in those districts, you're never going to encounter an enemy player or someone who's not from your division. That area is entirely self-contained and for you to explore.